Hi, this is Krista with Growing Older and Wiser. There have been studies done, and maybe you've heard about them, that most of us stop feeling our age, our internal age, at about the age of 30. Scientists have talked to people and psychologists have, and you can just ask people or observe people in your own life and find that it's true that most of us feel internally when we think of ourselves as about 30, right around in there. Even if we're in our 80s and 90s, we kind of at age 30, it kind of imprints on us somehow. And so even though we know that our bodies are aging and we know that we've lived longer than that, there's still those feelings. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know myself, when I was in my late 20s, mid and late 20s actually, I did something that not a lot of women I know have done, which is that I worked in machine shops and I was a machinist trainee. Prior to that, I had spent 5 years counseling drug addicts, and I mean some of the hardcore drug addicts that were either on probation or parole, and their choice was come see me or go to jail. So most of them chose me, but not all. A few thought, oh, jail's better than her. But, I had to work with these people and counsel them, and, we took tests to make sure they weren't using and so on and so forth. Well, it's a very, even today, I wouldn't work with drug addicts again, even though that 5 years I learned an awful lot, met some wonderful people. But I really admire people who can hang in there and continue working with people who have drug issues, because it's a pretty thankless task. People can get dry for a while and then they're back on it again. And anyway, what I started noticing, I started getting really discouraged, and I was young and I had my degree and all of that, but I started noticing that many of the people coming to me, the men, were working in machine shops, and they were making 3 and 4 and 5 times the amount of money I was making as a counselor who also was supervisor of an entire clinic. So once I got burned out, I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, you know what? I want to go work with things, not with people. I just want to be responsible for making things. So I found a machine shop that was hiring, and I went in there and said, oh yeah, hire me. And of course, we don't hire women to run machines. This was the early 70s, and good God, no, women can't do that work. The only thing we allow women to do is inspect the parts, because that's a nice, safe thing for them to do. We don't want women getting hurt by running on the machines. Oh dear. So, and they said, besides that, you have to pass an aptitude test. I said, okay, give me the aptitude test, see how I do. If I pass it, then I want to be considered for the job. So the guy grudgingly said, okay, gave me the test. I absolutely aced it, because little did he know that I used to work with my dad a lot, fixing cars and helping him. So wrenches didn't scare me, motors and engines didn't scare me, and I certainly didn't mind getting grease on my hands. So I said, fine, now I have to be considered. He said, I will introduce you to the foreman, but I can tell you right now, he will not hire you. I said, okay, let's just see what happens. So I met the foreman, and if you look in the dictionary, chauvinist would be there. Misogynist, oh my God, he was awful. So he took me around the shop. He kept calling me girly, and because I'm going to guess he was in his 50s at the time, and smoking a cigarette, had his cup of coffee. I could smell the bourbon in the coffee. And so he was taking me around, showing me the machines and saying, so see, that's why you wouldn't want to do this. You don't want to go home, stand all day and then go home with grease on you and oil and smelling bad and being hurtful. Just be happy working where the other women work. And, look at the parts and measure the parts. And I looked at him because I really wanted that job, because I knew the difference in pay was a couple of dollars an hour. And at this point, I wanted the money. So I looked at him and I said to him, okay, I'm going to make you a deal. We were standing on a catwalk where we could see the whole shop and see the machines and the guys working the machines. And I said, I want you to point out one machine in this shop that it takes a penis to run. And if you can do that, I'll leave. But if you can't, you have to hire me and give me a chance. Oh, I thought, the smoke just came out his ears. He was so angry. How dare I talk to him like that? But he hired me. And I spent the next couple of years working in machine shops and making that money and not having to deal with people so much and, working with things. But of course, that's also, and that's another story for another day, that's where I met a serial killer. But that's all in my autobiography if you want to read about that. Why am I telling you this story? There is a reason. The reason why is because if I let myself remember who I was then and how I felt then, that's fine, as long as I keep it with the internal attitudes. That attitude of, you know what, I can do pretty much what I want if I put my mind to it. But remembering, no, I can't stand at a machine for 8 to 12 hours anymore. I can't lift 100 pounds high, chest high anymore, which I used to be able to do. All of these things, my body has changed. So although it's okay to remember that my internal self is still in my 20s and 30s and enjoy those feelings, remember that's not where my body is. Because one of the things that happens is as we get older, we forget that the body has continued to age, even though maybe our mind and emotions have not. For instance, I know people in their 80s who still like to get in their car by themselves and take a 4 or 5 day driving trip. Well, when they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe that was just fine. Is it so safe in their 80s? So far it has been. Is it necessarily the wisest thing to do? I don't know. I have a relative who, even though she's at danger of falling, danger of having a stroke, so on and so forth, and I call her on a regular basis to make sure she's okay. And sometimes she gets annoyed at me. And I said, well, the reason I call you is because your doctor wants to make sure that you don't accidentally fall. And then you're laying on the floor with nobody to help you because nobody knew. And she said, well, if I fall down, Dad, I just don't care. And I said, well, I bet your little dog cares. I'll bet your little dog wouldn't be so happy to find you laying on the floor and not knowing what to do. They're a dog. I wouldn't be so happy if I call and no answer, and I've got to call 911 or call a neighbor or whatever. So again, my point is to remember that things that were necessarily easy and safe for us to do when we were younger, maybe as we grow older, we need to rethink that and take a look at some of the things, like driving, like taking trips by ourselves. I don't know what it is for you, but are there ways that it would be wise for you to readjust, reassess, and say, maybe it's time for me to fill in the blank. Maybe I should look at fill in the blank. And maybe not, I don't know. Maybe your situation is such that it's totally safe for you to do all the things you did when you were 30. I suspect not, but that's okay. I don't mind being wrong. My point is that even though we feel like we're about 30, keep that joyful optimism, keep that willingness, keep that sense of adventure and joy, keep it. But remember, we are living in bodies that have continued to age, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to readjust, perhaps, some of our expectations and some of our behaviors, if not for ourselves, perhaps for the people in our lives who love us and who want us to have a joyful, happy life. Think about it. Look at your life. See where you might need to make some adjustments, and maybe you don't. I put it out there to you. Your choice. Look at it and see. And enjoy that 30-year-old self inside. Enjoy her or him. That's awesome. But also honor your 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-year-old body. Honor that part of yourself as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. And we will talk again next week. Bye.